And our big question to you tonight on the program: do you think these latest measures by the state will curb corruption in Kenya? Do you think these latest measures by the state will curb corruption in Kenya? Send us a text message to the number 22155. Start with a yes or no for your text account in our poll result at the end of that. Remember, that number is absolutely free. On Twitter, you can reach us at KTN News, at Yvonne Okwara. Please use the hashtag Graft Diaries so that we can track your feedback. So let's take a look at some of those recommendations that were made by the head of state today from that task force that was multi-sectoral. It involved the private sector, the judiciary. We saw quite a bit. The Speaker of the Senate, Ekwe Ethuro, today speaking on behalf of both houses, called this a turning point in the country's war on graft. There's also some reprieve there for taxpayers. The president saying he is not going to ask for more taxes until such a time as we can prove that he's using the money wisely. Let's go to the other one right there. This will come a little bit later as we talk about the cabinets, the president's cabinet a little later. So let's go to our other boards today as we talk about the task force recommendations. So we've tried to put them together into various groups. Let's start off with what he said should be taking place within the judiciary. And this also came from that task force. Remember, the one that he put together after the State of the Nation address, that cases of corruption and economic crimes will no longer be heard in lower courts. Now we will have a division of the High Court that will deal with corruption and economic crimes cases only. And this should hopefully help to expedite so that that is the only set of cases that they will be hearing. He also said that they will be working through the Commission of Administrative Justice, that's the Ombudsman's office, to fast-track prosecution cases, prosecution of these cases in the country. So also, of course, after all of these cases, asset recovery is something that will happen. So not just getting the perpetrators, but also getting back the funds that were stolen. Let's move to another sector that should perhaps help in the war on corruption, and that is the banking system. And it's talked about now making sure that the banking system will no longer be a conduit for laundering proceeds of corruption. What is it going to do? Any bank that is found guilty of that will lose its license. Not only that, the directors of the banks will also be held personally liable should they be seen to have or be found guilty of laundering the proceeds of corruption. Let's take a look at another sector, and that would be legislation. What laws are we going to put in place? First of all, the very important one in terms of protecting whistleblowers, and the Attorney General of Kenya has been asked to complete legislation to ensure that anyone who comes forward with information on graft or corruption in the country is protected. He also talked about the media saying they should highlight some of these cases, but then provide the information to the relevant authorities to enable them investigate and prosecute these cases. Here's another big one, the anti-bribery bill that was handed to the president and then to the Attorney General, and this was done by the CEO of Safaricom, that is Bob Collymore. So the private sector has also come under fire, saying that, this is not just happening within government. So what is the role of the private sector in this fight against corruption, according to the president's recommendations? Well, one of them is this. So it's talking about the companies that provide goods and services to the government. And we also heard of those big figures that came out that were then retracted from the Ministry of Devolution, 8,700 shilling pens. Now, the Public Procurement Oversight Authority will periodically publish price reference lists. And any company that is found to be procuring goods above market rates will be blacklisted. And of course, any of those persons within procurement offices in government will also be held personally liable for dealing with companies that have been blacklisted. So this is some important information that is coming out there, and some of these information will be made open to the public so that you can take a look at what are some of the prices that are out there in the market in terms of procurement. Some other recommendations there, like we said, procurement officers will take personal responsibility for breach of law, and this is in the event that they deal with companies that have been blacklisted. And like we told you, any company that will be found to have breached the law will be disqualified for up to 5 years, and information will be made public. So this is another one, because this is where the president says graft comes in. Private companies delaying in service delivery will now be penalized and blacklisted there. And also, the companies will be made to sign and abide by a business code of ethics to enable them to do business with the government. Ethics and values is one of the things the president touched on, and like we've been telling you all day, he called on religious leaders to declare corruption a sin against God and humanity, calling on religious leaders to come in the war against corruption. Here's another one. In the next academic year, that's 2015-2016, there will be lessons on ethics that will be introduced in the school curriculum, and this is both in public and private schools. They will be taught and examined. Another thing that it will also be happening will be the KRA and customs officials who will be vetted by an independent body, and all senior government officials will undergo continuous and compulsory ethics training. So these are just some of those measures that have been taken in by the President Uhuru Kenyatta. We will wait and see what happens in this case. We'll also be having some analysis in just a moment with Wanjiru Gikonya from the Institute for Social Accountability.